when I knew I was going to have the surgery, I knew that not only was there a physical component, there was a spiritual component. I just knew that. And the doctor said, we can't schedule your surgery for a while. So go on your Maui retreat. And that deep voice, once again, showed up and said, you're not being torn apart. You're being put back right. And there were women that said, how can you go on a trip knowing you have this horrible thing in your body? I can't sleep. I can't eat. I said, I'm trying to honor it because it's teaching me something. And I needed to honor the fact that I wasn't taking care of myself the way that I needed to take care of myself.
Welcome to Signs from the Other Side with Fern Ronay. I'm your host, Fern Ronay, and this is the place to share stories of signs and messages received from the other side. Real quick before we get started, if you enjoy reading about signs and if you enjoy fiction like Bridget Jones and Sex and the City, you might enjoy my books, Better in the Morning and Better Believe It. And if you like this podcast, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe in Apple Podcasts and tell a friend too. Thank you so much for listening, and on to the show. Pam Sears is an author, a poet, a massage therapist, a hospice worker, a volunteer park ranger, stage 4 cancer survivor, and a psychic medium with a TikTok following of over 250,000 followers, where she is generous with her wisdom, her personal stories, her dance videos, and more. She's also a mother and grandmother, and I can't wait to chat about her first children's book, which is based on her grandson and called No No Nap. Pam, thank you so much for being here.
Oh gosh, thank you for having me here. The energy just feels so up.
Right. Oh, good. Well, you're amazing. And one of my favorite videos of you is when you're dancing to Baby Got Back. I was like, I love Pam. You just look like you're having so much fun and are just so fearless. And I wonder if 5-year-old Pam, so it sounds like you lived this life, you had this ability, and then the world kind of tried to make you small, and you allowed it to keep yourself safe, as we do.
Right.
But would 5-year-old Pam look at you now and be like, she's back, that's the real her?
The 5-year-old would be, that's the part that was hidden. That's the part of me that was hidden, but I did it to protect myself. And now she's exactly where she's supposed to be, and she's her.
Yes, the true you. Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like I can so relate to that. I feel like, and I think everyone can, that we come to this earth, our true selves, our true souls, and then the world beats us up, and we do things to hide our true selves, and that's okay. It's a protection mechanism.
Yes.
But when you go through the work and you get back to who you truly are, what a gift that is, and what a gift it is to the rest of the world. Because I think your TikToks, and we know each other through Evolve, the work that you do, you being you, I think helps so many other people feel comfortable with themselves.
It took me a lot of years to get into that authenticity. And so if I'm going to be doing this work and I'm going to have these audiences, I don't want to be anybody else. I want to be me, and I want them to know it's okay for them to be them as well.
So you experienced so many things, and we could be here, I think, for 24 hours. But let's start at the beginning. You grew up in Arizona. You live there now in a different part. Your childhood was not perfect. There was trauma, and it was difficult. You would hear your guides and hear others speaking to you that were on the other side, and you kind of said, I have another brain.
I felt like I had another mind.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that popped out the way it did. It just, I feel like, and that makes sense because during that traumatic childhood, I would escape into a lot of nature. Even as a young child, I would write. I'd been writing words forever. And I would always know somehow, even though I was a little child and I didn't know I didn't know they were guides. I didn't know it was my higher self. I just knew I had this other mind that was always going to keep me safe and protected. So I could get away from that violent household and I would be safe because that other mind was helping me.
So you experienced so many things, and then you went on to have a corporate career that sounded like it was very successful, but you ended up getting fired, and it was the best thing that ever happened to you. Can you tell
Correct.
that story?
You know, for the first half of that corporate world, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. And, and then the second half of it was becoming, I don't want to claim it, but the ADHD and ADD stuff part of me just didn't handle 300 files and trying to, it just wasn't me. I knew that I was supposed to work with my hands, not necessarily, in a corporate world with my brain. But I have two young children. It's called a living. It's called health insurance. But I knew that I didn't belong there. I knew I belonged somewhere in a healing capacity. And as the universe works, they moved the good supervisor out, brought in a different supervisor. And from there on out, it was all downhill. I got fired and I was devastated. And I had a really good friend say, "Congratulations." And I'm like, "How could you say such a thing?" And she goes, You're not supposed to be there anymore. It was time for
Hmm.
you to move on. It still took me another year to figure things out. I would work, for other companies and, private, whatever you want to call that. And then all of a sudden, when I was swimming in the pool doing my laps, and there was nobody but me, I always found a way to be just by myself. And I said, I don't know where I'm supposed to go. What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to be? And then a deep voice, which I've heard many, many, many times, said the word massage college. And I stood up looking around thinking there was somebody in the pool with me, and there wasn't. And I'm like, massage college. And then that started me on a new journey, a new adventure.
And this was also a time, so you were 40, about 40, and you were also going through the end of your marriage. These are some of the most stressful things that could happen to a human being.
I made the decision that I knew that I wasn't supposed to be in the marriage anymore. So it actually started to crumble right after I graduated massage college. I didn't have a job yet. I didn't know where I was going to go. And I've always faced a fear. Feel the fear, but do it anyway. And I thought to myself, I have to do this. So I chose to walk out that door with two young children, not knowing where I was going, where I was headed. And during my later years, when my friends would say, oh, I can't do this, or I can't, they would say, remember when you walked out of that house with two young children, starting a whole new life? If you can do that, you can do anything.
When you were, I love this story. When you were working on someone, you were working in a chiropractor's office, and someone came in, an older gentleman with bright blue eyes, and he started telling you what to do. If I'd been in that situation, I'd be like, "Who is this jerk?"
I mean, I didn't know him. He came out of nowhere. The chiropractor didn't know him. He wasn't a patient or anything. He just showed up one day, and I noticed the crystal blue eyes. And I'm like, nobody has eyes that blue. Nobody. White hair. And so, and I don't know, the voice said, don't start him face down, start him face up. And I'm like, okay, because my guides were always communicating with me. And he said to me, I have this pain in my shoulder here. I want you, and I'm like, okay, I can work on that. And he goes, no, we're going to do it a little bit different today. And that's when I thought, what? And he said, we're not going to do it in the traditional therapeutic massage way. And I looked at him like, what the hell? And the guide said, humor him, please. Humor him. And I thought, I don't know what this is, but I got to listen. Okay, I'll humor the old guy, right? So what he was showing me was, he said, I don't want you to place your hand on this area. I want you to put your hand above that area. I want you to slowly move the hand. I want you to feel for energy changes. What is it? Anyway, all right, I'll do. So as I was moving around, once I got to the site that was supposedly injured, I felt the change in the energy. Okay. And he could tell, he knew. He's like, okay, now I want you to move that out, push it out through the arm, push it, move this out. And I'm like, he kind of used the word like, slough it out. I don't know about this guy's, So I sloughed it out and he said, thank you. That feels much better. And I looked at him and I said, who are you? And he said, I'm just a traveler. I'm just a traveler, and I'm here to tell you that it's time to do your work. I thought I was doing it, being a massage therapist. That was just the beginning of this journey. I'm here to tell you that it's time to do your work. So that was the very beginning of me realizing energy work and therapeutic touch and moving things, energetically. So and I never saw him again. He never came back. And I thought to myself, something big just happened, but I'm not quite sure what. But then as I processed everything, I realized he was there in divine timing and getting me ready for the next stage of my new awakened journey.
And the next stage was the touchless therapy and doing more of the work with being a psychic medium.
Yes.
And what did that look like? Did you have to go to another school for touchless therapy?
Well, what's interesting is somebody made me aware that, those who do healing work are born healers. Now, can we go and take courses and things like that to help with us? That was when I took a course, it was a weekend with the Nurse Healers Association. And they're like, you already know what you're doing. We're just validating that for you. Somebody said, you've been doing this work your whole life and you didn't know it. And I realized more so when I became a volunteer at the Child Crisis Center, like the therapist said to me, you got strength from your abuse as well. Now, what do you want to do with that? And I was like, oh, okay. So I remember I was in the toddler house and I remember walking in and these children were just soaking it up. When we are just sitting in our power, we don't have to say, oh, I'm going to send healing. We just sit there and the universe does its thing.
Right. You were just being you.
I was just being me. Yes.
Yes.
And the kids were just like, oh my gosh, I was one of them. It's like they knew I was one of them and that they were safe with me. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Do you think people like the traveler and your boss before that and anyone, all of these people who come into our lives and have a purpose and a message on our journey, is this pre-planned? Is this, we wanted this for our soul to evolve? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. 100% agree. Yes.
That when you and that boss get to the other side someday, many years from now, it's like, oh, you remember me? Like you taught me that lesson you gave me that gift.
That gift.
Of being not such a great boss.
At the time, she wasn't conscious of her role.
Right. Because there have been so many people who've said and done things to me, and it's, all of us, that I think it's so easy to think back on them and be bitter and still be hurt by it. But lately I'm trying to say, thank you for being a teacher. That was a teacher on this journey.
And I've done that with a couple of people, and they were very uncomfortable with me saying thank you for being such jerks to me. Because it really, even my ex-husband, I have to say thank you because you gave me a gift. I think, somebody laughed at me yesterday when I just said this, and I go, we were probably sitting on the other side, and he goes, okay, we're going to get married. We're going to do this. And then when it's time for you to really do that, I'm going to be right. So, I have to say, I have to say thank you for that. It's still a gift. He's still a teacher, a lesson. And some people say, how can you even be in the same room with him? And I was like, because I have a different thought process.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. When I'm in the, I don't know how to describe it sometimes, but just when I'm in my earthly state, I think if I were in the same room with some of these people who did certain things to me, I would want to insult them or be mean. But my higher self is like, they played their role great. When the two of you are on the other side and you're reviewing your lives, you'll be like, you did that, like you performed that to perfection and you gave me the greatest lesson.
Yes.
So thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
But there's so many people that are so stuck in that hate and bitterness and pain. It's like, but I knew my higher self guided me. Let's go work with that pain. Let's transmute that because you can't hold on to all of that and do the work that you're doing to help others.
Your mom, you describe in one of your TikToks, her coming through, and it was very emotional. Can you describe that one?
So, and that was actually on my Instagram platform. And I remember I was doing the live and I was, doing mediumship. And I said, hey, let's see if we have somebody coming through. And Mom's been crossed over since 2003. And I sat there and all of a sudden I said, okay, everybody, somebody, I have somebody here. And it was almost like, what? And she goes, it's Mom. It's Mom. And I'm like, my mom hasn't shown up in like forever. And I'm like, what? And Mom kept saying, tell them the story. Tell them the story. And I was like, and they're all looking at me because the people that were there remember this because they were like, what's going on? I go, I don't know. And she kept saying, tell them the story about the love. And then it popped in that, Mom being a professional ballroom dancer, left that to elope and raise kids, 5 children. She had 5 husbands, and she was never loved the way that she needed to be and wanted to be. Okay. As a ballroom dancer, she got to tour, and this was a gentleman in the band. And he had fallen in love with Mom, and he said, I want to be with you. And Mom's like, I'm 21 or 20 or 21. You're a wife. And I can't do that. So, of course, she never saw him again after the tour was over. And apparently his wife had passed. And for 9 years, he was looking for my mom. And Mom got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And then he found her through a group of other friends, dancers and stuff. And so I saw an immediate change in her. And I would say, hey, because I got to be home at a certain time. Sid's going to call. I'd be on the phone. She goes, I can't stay on long because Sid's going to call. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, childhood, crushes and stuff. And I said, Mom, you got to tell him about the cancer. And she goes, I can't. His wife died of cancer. I can't. I said, Mom, it's not fair. I mean, you're going to do what you're going to do. And eventually she told him. And he said, it's taken me 9 years to find you. You're not going anywhere. And of course, he had that for 3 months. He showed up at the funeral. All of my kids and my sisters are like, oh my God, why couldn't Mom have lived happily ever after? Finally, after 5 spouses, I'm getting chills as I share this. And my kids are like, he would have been an awesome grandpa. And I said, why are you guys asking me? I don't have all the answers. I don't know. And then it took me a little processing time to realize, I think that was her purpose. to find unconditional love. And she found it, and 3
Finally.
months later, she
Yes.
crossed over.
Yes.
But she
Wow.
wanted me to share that story with all of those people on the live. And by sharing her story, it affected every one of those people, especially the ones who were like similar to my mom, never felt loved, one relationship after another. And so it was, and it's on I do have it on my social platform. And it was just, I couldn't believe that mom showed up, and to have it right there captured and recorded. Oh,
Yes, she was like, there are so many people that have to hear this story. But your mom's story, it's some people might hear that and say, what a shame that she didn't get with him initially and had this love her whole life, but or for those years. But everything has to happen the way it has to happen. And
yes,
I think that she came to Earth to experience those other things,
yes,
and her soul evolved. And then she still got the icing on the cake was like, you
yes,
still get to be in a human body and experience that unconditional true love from
yes.
this man.
I didn't know this until mom had passed, because she always fought me on what I was doing. She fought me on me talking to spirit. She fought me on doing the healing work. A psychic medium told me, your mom also had that ability, but he was made fun of. And so she blocked it all, and she didn't want you to be hurt. And I'm like, that's what I regret, that we couldn't have had that communication while she was
Right.
on Earth. But that's okay. I mean,
It had to happen that way. Yes.
yes.
One of the other things that's so inspiring is that you truly are so fearless. How would you teach a nervous Nelly like myself to be so fearless? And the perfect example is you were diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. There was a treatment recommended, and you said no. Is that something that you learn, or is it something, well, you learned to trust your gut and listen to that over the other advice?
So my higher self, and you said something about being fearless. I'm not fearless. I feel the fear and do it anyway. Okay.
Yes.
So I remembered when I had the mastectomy, I knew that I would never do traditional chemo or radiation. That was just a given. And they, as the people that they are, tried to instill fear that if I don't do this, I'm going to die. And I think how it helped with other, like women, they would say, I heard you, did all of this and this and this. What advice would you give me? And I said, I'm only going to give you one sentence of advice. And that was, don't make a decision based on fear.
Mm.
Don't make that decision, work through that. And so, but I knew right away, like, excuse me, you're not going to, no, we're not going to have any fear in regards to that. You're not going to make me do something that I know is not for me. Okay. And I had a best friend, she's on the other side. She went the traditional route, and she's on the other side. And I'm just saying, for me, I knew that in order to stay on this earth, I had to do something a little different. It's not, I did alternative, but it didn't really work, that total alternative. So, I came up with a plan with the beautiful oncologist, and, it's medication, but it's something that works with me, not against me.
Right.
And this
That feels
oncologist,
right.
yes, he said to me, I want to tell you something. I despise the word terminal. He said, we are all born terminal. And I don't like that word. And he said, and I gave him all my books, and I moved to another city, and I have a new oncologist. And he's like, you're not like other patients. You're living life. And when he found out that I was recently back in remission, he swung me around the room and, think about how many people maybe he's lost. Okay. And
Right.
he knows what I do. I gave him my no nap book, and he said his daughters love it. And I'm like, okay,
Oh.
this is pretty cool. So was I afraid to, let me share something really quick. When I knew I was going to have the surgery, I knew that not only was there a physical component, there was a spiritual component. I just knew that. And the doctor said, we can't schedule your surgery for a while. So go on your Maui retreat. And so on the Maui retreat, we stopped at a spot before we took the road to Hana, and there were all these lava, I still have the picture. And each of us went and took a little spot, and we kind of did a little meditation. And that deep voice, once again, showed up and said, you're not being torn apart, you're being put back right. And of course, once again, I turned around and I'm like, where did he go? And they're like, there's nobody there. And there were women that said, how can you go on a trip knowing you have this horrible thing in your body? I can't sleep. I can't eat. I said, I'm trying to honor it because it's teaching me something. And they're like, you're always so weird. But it was,
Yeah.
it was teaching me something. And I needed to honor the fact that I wasn't taking care of myself the way that I needed to take care of myself.
Oh, really? Were you? Okay.
It was about lack of nurturing of self. That's what I got
Yeah.
from my part of the cancer journey. It was not honoring because I was still carrying over a lot of the abuse and was still letting people walk all over me.
Yes. So if someone is in that situation, they get this diagnosis, is the advice to get quiet to get the answer?
Mhm. I mean, I fear a lot of things, but it's not going to stop me. Like when they say, weren't you afraid walking out of that house with 2 young children and not knowing? I said, yeah, but I was going to make it,
Yes.
and I did. Yes.
Did your children, when at all these points, different points, how did they react to some of your decisions?
They were scared. They were
Yeah.
scared. And I had one son say, you need to listen to these doctors because they know what they're doing, and I just said, you need to back up, back off. This is my body and my choices. And the other son said, I don't care what you choose. I just want it to work. Okay. But there
Right.
was fear. And one of the things that stayed with me forever and ever is my older son was like, I have to work. I don't think I can be at the hospital. And I think he just did, some of that, it's hard to be around something like that. And I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah, of course.
I'm good. It's all right. And the first thing when I opened my eyes were both sons. I always get emotional. Both sons were on either side of me when I woke up from that surgery. And woo,
Yes. That's beautiful. Speaking of beautiful and awesome, here we are with No Nap. I loved it. Obviously on a personal level with the spirit guides and sleep. But it's just so sweet because there is also a note that you write to your grandson in the beginning that is basically says, and everyone who's listening should read it because it's so beautiful. The essence was, you've known each other before, you'll know each other forever. He's a soulmate, and yes, it's so beautiful. So can you
thank
tell me
you.
a little bit about him?
Xander, and everybody keeps saying, is it with a Z? Yes, it's with a Z. And we're like little kids together. As soon as and I live up north, and it's a 2-hour drive. I walk in the door, and my daughter-in-law's like, "There's all the chaos. Here comes this grandma." And Xander's like, "Oh." And so we play and we enjoy and we have a lot of fun watching him growing up. And that was one of my fears was, what if I'm not here? The stage 4 is a pretty intense diagnosis. Okay. And I was like, and I told my son, I just want to be here to make sure he goes to kindergarten, and he goes, "Why, Mom, why can't you ask for longer?" The oncologist says, "Why limit yourself? Let's give you all the years you want." And I'm like,
Right.
I don't want to limit myself on that. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to get to play. Let me put it this way. There wasn't a lot of play when I was little. I mean, there was, but I was always running away from something. I was always kind of by myself and running. And so it's that playful aspect. Like they say, um, it's different when you have grandkids, it's that
Yeah.
surface off and you just get to step into a whole new magical world.
Yes. What a gift. What a gift to your grandsons that they have an adult in their life who is fun, like pure fun. That's a great gift, and it makes them feel like the world isn't a scary place. It's a fun place. It's interesting that you say you wish your mom was here. I always, I think sometimes people think because I believe what I believe that if they pass, I say they're still here and that's okay. But I honor what it feels like to be human, which is the best place for your loved ones is to be here because we are feeling it as
Yes.
human beings. We want them here. That doesn't take away from the fact that they're still here on the other side. But
Right.
yes, you're so honest about especially with your hospice work when you were, we'll get to back to the book, but really quickly, the story of your brother, how he did not believe in God. He did not want anyone praying at his bedside. I so appreciate that you were like, that is what he wants.
And I try to remind people, I mean, being a massage therapist for hospice and a psychic medium, I got stories for days. But I remind people, watch what you're saying when they're unresponsive. The last thing to go is hearing,
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And it's like they hear, they'll be arguing and fighting and, all that stuff. And I felt like I was a failure to my brother because he said, even if I become unresponsive, don't let anybody pray over me. And that was kind of taken out of my hands. I made a pact and I made a promise. And I think that when
Yeah,
somebody has those last wishes, we need to honor them. We are
yes,
not to push any agendas on those patients.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're so honest and so, I like the way you explain things too. You're very good at you're a
Try.
teacher.
I try.
Yes. And so back to the book. So if you could give the premise.
So I knew I wrote 2 books prior to that, poetry and hospice
Yes.
stories and things like that. And I ended up getting a mediumship with a friend of mine, and we were talking about that other book, and it just popped in, children's book, and I went, wow. And Xander had already been born, and then all of a sudden, spirits like, there are so many little ones that see, hear, and know their spirit, and families freak out like, what? Blah blah blah. So Spirit said, let's do a children's book about Xander meeting his spirit guides. And we're going to put in the back of the book. In fact, my editor is the one that asked me to put a back page for parents to say, hey, look, this is normal that little ones, can see, hear, and know. And of course, with children's book, you have to have a problem to solve. So Xander's in timeout because he doesn't want to take a nap. And so he gets put into timeout, and his spirit guides show up and they help him understand why naps are important and how to say sorry to mom and dad. And the illustrator struggled at first. I was introduced to her and she goes, let's have a talk. Let's see if we want to work together. She was intrigued about the subject, but she was also in that Catholic belief system. And so it was interesting because she goes on, but I'm so intrigued with the idea. Her mom was on hospice at the time that she was, maybe making some drawings and giving me some ideas. And she told her mom, I'm conflicted. I don't know what to do. And, she was shocked. Her mom said, you need to do this. You need to do this book. And she goes, there's my mom all with her rosary and everything. You need to do this. And I remember telling the illustrator, I'm going to leave it up to you, but I want lots of cultures represented in the spirit guides. The two main ones,
Yes.
Liam and Lexi, and she did fabulous. She did
Yes,
a
she really did.
fabulous
Absolutely.
job.
Yes, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful book. It really is.
And
That's an
and
amazing story about the
and
illustrator. Yes.
that looks just like him. I mean, she captured,
Oh,
and my son and daughter-in-law, she captured the essence of that. And so, yeah, so I'm on my fourth book, and it'll be for for Leo. And I don't want to get into it
oh,
because, until I'm
yeah,
ready to talk about the title and stuff. There's still a sacred component to it, but it's not quite that.
yes.
And most people, 99.9% people love it. And then the other percent are like, we
I
want
know
we
that
want yeah.
feeling.
Okay.
How do you deal with them? I feel like you deal with like how you are on social. I'm trying to put myself out there more, and so I can find my tribe. And but it can be scary.
I try to just hold space for them and send them love
Yes. Yep.
because I'm reminded that they're hurting
Mm-hmm.
and they have a lot of fear. And we can't
Yep.
change that. They have their own journeys to do. The God that I
Yeah.
know, he doesn't instill fear at
Yep.
all.
Exactly. 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 So where can everyone find No No
Um,
Nap?
No No Nap is on Amazon with the other two books. In fact, No No Nap and all the other two books got a 5-star review from Reader's
Yes.
Favorite. So I'm pretty
Yes.
proud of that. And they are all on Amazon. There's lots of reviews that people can go and read. There are certain reviews where they're saying, my kids want it every night.
Oh, there's no better feedback than that.
But if it helps also parents understand, I mean, little ones are popping in with past lives and you're not my real mom and I want to go to my real house. And they're like, and I had parents say, I don't know what to do. So I wrote that page that said,
Yes.
be open and say,
Yes.
who is it? What do they look like? I want more children to be able to have it and to start asking and open conversations.
Yes.
There are, like people say, there's much more people awakening, and I agree with that. And these little ones, I think some of them just stop believing because the parents don't believe, or that's just an imaginary friend, but I think if we were to encourage the children, they might stay open.
Where can everyone find you?
My website is www.pamsears.com. And on my website, the very top of my website, I have my link tree. So all my platforms are on my link tree at the top of my website. The books are there also.
Perfect.
You click on that, it takes you right to Amazon. So yeah, and the email's listed in the link tree as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much for listening to Signs from the Other Side. You can find me, Fern Ronay, on all social media at Fern Ronay, Ronay. I love hearing from you and I love hearing your stories of signs. And if you would like to hear more episodes of this show, please be sure to subscribe in Apple Podcasts. Thank you again and sweet dreams.